You want to make some picks on your favorite sports? Check out Underdog's fantasy pick'em game, where you can pick higher or lower on between 2 to 8 players and can win up to 325 times your entry by using code Niners when you sign up, and you'll get $1,000 bonus cash and a free pick.
From the alley-oops at Kezar to the glory days at the stick. From who's got it better than us to brick by brick. It's always the 49ers way, from off-season to game day. Yeah, we talk back. It's the 49ers cutback.
It's 49ers Cutback podcast time. Welcome to the show, everyone. I want to talk about offensive linemen the 49ers can target in round two. And the news came out that the 49ers have signed Ben Bartch to a 1-year contract, bringing him back. And there is a real possibility that Ben Bartch could be the starting left guard for the 49ers in 2025. But the 49ers always like to do this. They like to make sure there are no holes along the offensive line, defensive line, in the secondary. So they're not held to having to draft somebody that's going to have to step right in and play. They want to have all those holes filled so that way they can draft and be a little bit more free with the way that they draft. So getting Ben Bartch back is huge, but there's still a question mark about what's going to happen at left guard in the future. And it could easily be Ben Bartch is going to play really well this year. Next year, the 49ers are going to bring him back. He'll still be a lot cheaper than some of the big name offensive guards. And you've got your left guard of the future. But I think the 49ers would like to bring in some competition. It was just last year that it was looked at. Spencer Burford and John Feliciano are going to be your starting right guard. You draft Dominic Pooney, and the 49ers place him at right guard, and everyone's asking in mini camps and OTAs and training camp, what's going on? Why is Dominic Pooney playing right guard when he played left side offensive line? Shouldn't he be backing up Banks? That way this year he could take over at left guard. Well, fast forward a little bit of time and you get some injuries. John Feliciano is dealing with a knee injury, and then Spencer Burford's dealing with an injury that keeps him out, a broken hand, and Dominic Pooney's getting first-team reps, and he never looked back. So having that replacement ready is exactly what the 49ers need to do, and we've just seen them do this time after time. Like in Tomlinson, they get Aaron Banks. Daniel Brunskill, they get Spencer Burford. This last year, Dominic Pooney, you just get an interior lineman that could step in and play. So the 49ers can look in a couple of different avenues in the second and third round, which is day 2 of the draft, for a player to play along the offensive line. And it was just last year that they struck gold in the third round with Dominic Pooney. And it was interesting because so many people thought the 49ers had to hit offensive line in round 1. There were so many really good players there. Graham Barton, Kingsley Suamatia. There was offensive tackles that the 49ers needed to grab. That was what everyone was saying. You got to get an offensive tackle that could step in and play right now. It upgrades your right side, and then eventually they took over for Trent Williams. 49ers didn't do that. What they did do was strike gold on a third-round pick, Dominic Pooney, that stepped in as part of PFF's top 100 players in the NFL in his rookie season. Really phenomenal season. And Dominic Pooney is a phenomenal player. And you can't exactly hope that you're going to hit Dominic, or you can hope, but just knowing that you're going to hit Dominic Pooney's in the second and third round consistently is going to be tough. But with the type of draft pick the 49ers are looking for, they're looking for an impact player. They might not go offensive line in round 1. And if you don't go offensive line in round 1, you don't get the usual suspects, Kelvin Banks, you don't get Will Campbell, you don't get Josh Simmons, you don't get Armand Membu. And who knows, maybe those guys are the guys you like of that group are gone. You look to the second and third round to potentially fill one of those needs. And I think there's really good football players that are going to be available in round 2 and 3 along the offensive line. Whether you're looking for left tackle, right tackle, interior offensive line, there are going to be players there. Now, I do believe that there's more interior depth when it comes to offensive line play in rounds 2 and 3, kind of the similar way you found Dominic Pooney last year. Offensive tackles that can slide in and play at a high level. So we know the 49ers are looking to upgrade offensive line, and I think that's probably a good spot to do it. Now, that's not saying for sure they're not going to draft an O lineman with an early pick at pick 11, and then that changes the way you go about it. But you've got an opportunity to hit on really good offensive linemen and defensive tackles in rounds 2 and 3. So, in this episode, we're going to talk about the offensive linemen that I really like for the 49ers in rounds 2 and 3. And I'm not going to touch on all of them. There's just not enough time for that. But I'm going to try to do a comprehensive look so you guys can get an idea. If the 49ers don't go with Kelvin Banks or Campbell or Armand Membu or Josh Simmons, that there are talented players in the second round that they could hit on that could have an impact on the football team this year. They could come in and compete with Ben Parch. Some of them could come in and compete with Mike McGlinchey. And I don't know if we can get a rookie center. That probably needs to be addressed in free agency. But just seeing the impact that these guys could have could be huge. So that's what we're doing on the episode. Just like always, please leave in the comment section any guys that I don't go over. I'll make sure to get to them as soon as I can. We'll do more videos. I've been doing breakdowns over on Patreon. I think I've broke down like close to 20 players now over on Patreon. So those are always available as well. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you're listening on audio platform, it's 49ers Cutback on Believe Network. Please give it a 5-star rating. And if you are going to bet with Bet Online. Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting in 2025. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, Bet Online is your ultimate game day companion. With the largest selection of odds on everything from NBA and college basketball to the NHL and UFC, Bet Online continues to be your number one sports betting source. From every three-pointer to hat trick, Bet Online has you covered with odds, stats, and more for every game, every play, and every win. Bet Online, the game starts here. So I talked about the usual suspects. We did a video already talking about offensive linemen, who the 49ers could hit on at 11. And I think that's probably been a lot of the consistent conversation when it comes to offensive line play, is potentially hitting at 11. Now, I have players that I really like after that, and some of them you've probably heard me talk about. So one of the guys that I'm going to start with, because he's probably the most frequent that I talk about, and I just want to go ahead and talk about him before I move on, because he is one of my favorite players, but I don't want to touch on him too much because I know you guys have heard about it before. But if this is your first time on the channel, you're going to find that this is one of my guys. This is one of the guys I've really locked onto that I think is very talented. It could be a day one starter for the 49ers. The same way I thought about Dominic Puni being a guy that could step in and be a big-time player for the 49ers. I thought the same thing about this guy, and that's Donovan Jackson, offensive guard out of Ohio State. 6'4", so he's not the elite height, that's for sure. He's going to be 320 pounds, which presents a lot of really great things. You talk about athleticism. How about this? A 35.5 vertical jump that happened in high school. So we'll see what happens when he competes at the combine later on this week. His shuttle was a 4.57, which is a top 84 percentile. That's really quick, which means he's got the lateral quickness. He's got the explosiveness to win in the first 10 yards. Those things are things I look at when I'm looking at certain types of degrees that you need to have to be a really successful player within Kyle Shanahan's system. And I do think he has that ability, because you're talking about a guy that has the necessary size. 6'4", 320 on the interior part of your offensive line is really important. And the 49ers tried to go this way with Aaron Banks, and you get a big guy, 330 pounds out of Notre Dame. And the question marks for Aaron Banks, though, were the short area quickness, the lateral quickness. Can he get to the second level consistently? Well, that's the difference between Aaron Banks, who's that size, who's 6'5", 330 pounds, and Donovan Jackson, who's 6'4", 320 pounds. Donovan Jackson can get to the second level. Donovan Jackson has the explosiveness and a really good first step to win at the point of attack consistently, but to win in space. And then he also has a lateral quickness to be able to hang with the more athletic defensive tackles in the NFL. They want to move quickly, he can move with them. But he's got the size as well at 320 pounds to have that consistent anchor to not allow the bigger defensive tackles to be able to push him back. A good example would be he's got the lateral quickness to stay with Walter Nolan, but he's also got the anchor, to be able to stay with some of the bigger guys like Deion Walker, defensive tackles that can push you back. So, Kenneth Grant, like those kind of guys. So that's what you're looking for an interior offensive lineman. Nothing else really matters. Arm length don't matter. You want lateral quickness and an anchor and the ability to win on the second level. And Donovan Jackson has that in a big way. You throw in the fact that he's got some nasty in him, and I love that for my offensive linemen, guys who are finishers. He gets an opportunity to put you in the ground. He does it. He pulls, he lays you out. There's a lot to like about Donovan Jackson, not to mention he has showed the ability to kick out to left tackle. Josh Simmons got hurt. Donovan Jackson can do it in a pinch, which shows some of his ability to operate in space and play against longer edge defenders without really having the arms to do so and being able to hang in there. So I really like that. I also love the fact that he doesn't let blocks go. He has really good grip strength. So when he locks onto you, it's a done deal. That's one thing the 49ers offensive line needs to get better at key positions. Left guard was one of those. Center is definitely one of those. When you lock onto someone, you want to be able to contain them. And that's something that Donovan Jackson does at a high level. So I love the ability that he has, from the anchor to the lateral quickness to the big time punch when he's making contact with the opposing player, and then just everything he does after that, the nasty, the proper technique. So Donovan Jackson's one of my guys, and I think if he was available at 43, this is a guy that I would run the pick in for. I'd even be willing to trade into the top 40 to go ahead and get him, because I do think he's that talented. I think he could step in day one, and there's going to be other guys that are going to kind of be in that area potentially that could go, that the 49ers I know will be interested in. And so that's something to remember as well. You're looking for players in that area. And I want to talk about guys that, that are pretty talented that are moving up boards. And one of those guys has to be Gray Zabel. And by now, Gray Zabel is kind of a name that everyone is talking about, out of North Dakota State. 6'5", 316 pounds. Because of his arm length, he's going to be an interior offensive lineman, even though he played right tackle consistently in college. You've just got a guy that needs to, to make sure that he's moved inside because of arm length. He just wouldn't win successfully, consistently on the outside with his arm length at 32 and 2/8. Once you get under 33, you can't play offensive tackle. The 49ers are willing to play guys on the outside that have 33-plus inch arms, which is a rarity amongst most teams in the NFL. Most teams want 34 inches or longer to play on the outside, to be able to make up that distance and play against speed rushers and guys that have a lot of space. But when it comes to Gray Zabel, he's going to have to move inside and play on the interior, whether that is guard or that is center. And I'm really going to be interested to see how he tests this week, because I don't know if he shows the consistent speed to be able to win consistently on the second level. But he did show some things on film that made it look good. And so he's got some potential there. And so I do like him. I think that he plays pretty good with leverage, considering how tall he is. He's still able to get low, play low, good pad level. And he does a very good job of displacing people in the run game, which I like. You look at him when he's in pass protection, he's a smooth operator. He wins with heavy hands. He usually protects his chest plate pretty well and keeps defensive players unable to get to his chest plate, or they can get a long arm on him and win. He processes very fast. He can pick up on blitzes, rushes, different kinds of rushes. He recovers well. If he oversets and somebody tries to work inside, he has good lateral quickness to be able to recover and take care of it. That's why a lot of teams like him. My question marks are going to be, when he moves inside, how is he going to handle the defensive tackle like Kenneth Grant, who's 340 pounds? Is he going to be able to withstand and hold up with the anchor consistent enough to win? I think that is the question mark for Gray Zabel. But when you're looking at an offensive lineman with versatility, a guy that can play guard and center, a guy that can run the zone scheme and win, I think that there's going to be a lot of teams that are really big fans of him. Now, the question is going to be, is he going to be ending up working his way all the way into the first round? I think there's a possibility for that. So teams are definitely looking for players like Zabel, and I think that right now he is skyrocketed since the Senior Bowl and his performance there into the stratosphere. And I do think he should go somewhere in the second round. The way that teams are looking at him, I think he is a good prospect, but there's always the offset chance he's not going to even be available for the 49ers at 43. But I think he does a pretty good job, watching him overall. I think when it comes down to it, the main things that are really problems for him is the length when it comes to his arms and also how narrow his legs get in pass protection, creating a situation where he gets off balance. And that happens to a lot of young offensive tackles. That could be a little bit of a problem because when you play too high and your feet get too narrow, you can end up getting thrown side to side by some of the better edge rushers who will really beat you with speed and then power combo. So there are a few things I worry about when it comes to Gray Zabel, but I worry less about him on the outside because I think he's going to be a consistent inside player out of North Dakota State. So we'll see where he ends up being, where he ends up playing. But Gray Zabel, a pretty good prospect for the 49ers, if they're interested in getting one in that area. Now, next up is a guy that this dude is massive, and he's been one of my favorite guys for a little while now. I've brought him up on several shows that I've been on, but 6'6", 339 pounds. When you're talking size, he's got it all. Arianti Irsay out of Minnesota. So he played left tackle, and I watched his game film when he went against Penn State. And so you're talking about one of the best edge rushers, in college football, and probably the best edge rusher in college football and the best edge rusher in the draft. He went toe-to-toe, and you know what? He didn't do too bad. He held in there. I think one of the most interesting things about him is that he's going to have a tremendous 10-yard split. This guy can get off the ball quickly. And so usually when you see a guy like this, you're expecting a slow-footed individual, and this would scare you kind of the same way that Aaron Banks scared a lot of people, and they didn't even have him on their checklist because foot speed didn't really make a lot of sense. Well, Arianti Irsay moves for his size. And at 6'6", 340 pounds, he's got the ability to get some things done. Now, he has the arm length that you need at, 34-inch arm, so he could play offensive tackle in the NFL. I do think a lot of teams are going to see him, and they're going to see a Mekhi Becton type player as a big offensive tackle type that you could go ahead and move on the inside. I think the 49ers could easily draft him, play him at left guard, and he wouldn't miss a beat. He's a beast when it comes to the run game. Very physical at the point of attack. He's a mover. He moves people around. I think he's got plenty of anchor to play on the inside and enough lateral quickness to play on the inside. So he's a guy that I'm keeping an eye on, and I want to see how he tests, but definitely a huge fan. I think there are going to be plenty of teams that see him as a right tackle in the NFL and think that he could be a plug-and-play right tackle. So Arianti Irsay in round 2, could be a huge addition for the San Francisco 49ers if they decided to go there. And when you're talking about a mover, he's a devastating mover. He throws heavy hands, and he really drives people off the ball. So when you're talking 3rd and 1 situations, 3rd and 2 situations, you would run behind Arianti Irsay. That's what he does. He moves people off their spots. And as long as he's athletic enough to be able to play in the 49ers zone scheme, which he is, then he makes sense for their team. So you could imagine 3rd and 2, you need a conversion, and you've got Arianti Irsay playing left guard next to Trent Williams, who's playing left tackle. And you just line up and you run the ball behind him, and they're going to get you the 2 yards. Very, very big. Now, the fact that he has the natural ability to anchor is one of the reasons I love him as a guard and potential right tackle, because you do have to have the ability to anchor. And that's been one of the question marks amongst offensive linemen for the 49ers for a while. They have been running the issue of finding guys who are athletic enough to play in their zone scheme, but also able to pass protect in their pass scheme. So you get guys like Trent Williams, they're perfect for it. Now you found a guy like Dominic Pooney, perfect for it. The anchor, but the athletic ability to do both. Aaron Banks, they were hoping he had the anchor, but he didn't quite have the athleticism to be able to consistently win in your zone scheme. You look at what you're getting from Jake Brendel. Athleticism to win in the zone scheme, but he can't anchor, and he struggles in pass protection. So you're finding these guys that you're trying to get to work one way or the other, and you just haven't got it to completely work. So Irsay fits the bill. The lateral quickness, the anchor ability, the ability to win in space. Now, he's not going to be one of these long striders that if it's 20 yards downfield, he's going to make a play. But in those 10 yards where he needs to go from level 1 to level 2 and get on a linebacker, he's got that ability to do it. So he can take on bull rushes. He can get to the second level. He does a really good job with that. He's also a quick processor when it comes to picking up stunts and passing guys off. He does a really good thing with all of that. Just like all the guys that fit for the 49ers, you have to have an explosive first step. He does have explosive first step. And what do I have been saying? I had Donovan Jackson I talked about earlier. Now Arianti Irsay, he is a nasty finisher. He's going to put you on the ground and he's going to make you feel it. And that's what I love about this player. So Donovan Jackson, Arianti Irsay, nasty finishers. And even Gray Zabel, if you go watch his film, he would get guys down and he would get in their face and he would finish them off. That's the type of attitude I'm looking to get for the San Francisco 49ers offense, is those guys that they can do everything you need, all the intangibles, all the intelligence, but they can finish. They're nasty. That type of attitude in the run game is something the 49ers need, a bully ball mentality, and you could get it with a player like Arianti Irsay. Big fan, and I think that he's going to probably move up the boards in this process as people start to find, guys that they really enjoy. I think Arianti Irsay is going to be one of those guys that they really, really enjoy. Before we move on, I want to talk to you about Underdog Fantasy. So use Underdog Fantasy, link in the description. Click on it, download the app, use the promo code NINERS, NINERS, and you can play Underdog Fantasy's higher lower game. Just by signing up and using the promo code NINERS, you can get up to $1,000 in free bonus cash and a free pick. And then you can go through NHL, NBA, all kinds of options. You pick higher or lower. You think LeBron's going to score this many points, or maybe you're a Kings fan. It's one of those guys that are going to get it done. Maybe it's Levine, the new guy. You go ahead and you decide higher or lower, and you can win using Underdog Fantasy. So now that we've talked about Arianti Irsay, I want to talk about another guy that's very intriguing to me. And I know that I'm kind of jumping around, but this is a guy that, I was watching his film preparing for this episode, and I'd watched some before, but I like to get a refresher before I come on here and talk again. And I want to talk to you about Marcus Bowe out of Purdue. 6'4", 309 pounds. There's nothing that's going to jump off the screen when it comes to physicality. He's not one of those guys that's going to get everyone's attention with, his great arm length, his great size, and he does have 33-inch arms. He played right tackle at Purdue, played it pretty well. I do think Marcus Bowe is going to be moving inside. With the 33-inch arms, he's not under the threshold for the 49ers to play right tackle. I do believe he's an interior offensive lineman, though. I think he has the necessary athleticism to play within the scheme and be able to get to the second level consistently in Kyle Shanahan's zone scheme. But I think that Marcus Bowe could be a easy transition to guard, but I think he could also be a transition to center. This is one of the few guys that I've seen that are making a transition that I see a potential center move for Marcus Bowe. You're talking about a guy so smart, so athletic, really talented individual. And so that's why I wanted to talk about him, because the 49ers do potentially need to hit on a center prospect. Maybe they're going to go get Drew Dahlman. I don't know. Maybe they do, and we don't have to talk about this because Dahlman's going to be here, on a 4-year deal through his prime, and center's not an issue. But if you're doing something a little bit smaller, you're getting an older center, maybe you're getting Ryan Kelly from the Colts, and then potentially you've got to bring somebody in to develop. This could be a real good possibility. He could help you early at guard and then start training to be the center of the future with Marcus Bowe. He's got really good lateral quickness, right? One of the things you have to be an interior offensive lineman for the San Francisco 49ers. His grace, his smoothness, his kick slide is clean. If he had 34-inch arms, I think a lot of teams would be seeing him as an offensive tackle consistently because he's just really good with it. He's got a wrestler's mentality, and guess what? He is a finisher when he's in the run blocking. He likes to put people on the ground consistently. He also is really good at maintaining contact with those players. Once again, good grip strength, not allowing those players to get free and being able to handle them when he's doing the things that he's supposed to do. He has a jarring initial punch and a really good first step. That is good. He keeps his hands active throughout the entire rep, and he is just comfortable and calm when he's going through his work. He's got all the ability to play guard and center. That's what I wrote down. I like him potentially playing center. That's one of the things I love the most. He's got really good spatial awareness when working in space and being able to get on players on the second level in the run game but also in screens and when he's pulling. You watch his film, and there are times when he's pulling from right to left, and it looks like he's basically jogging or pausing, but what he's doing is waiting for the play to develop. Then he hits the gas and he lights somebody up, and the hole opens. So he's really good about knowing where he's supposed to be and what he's supposed to do. He's a natural knee bender, which means we don't get a lot of waist movement and bend, so he doesn't lose his balance. That's something that's very important because he's able to keep all of his functional strength and all of his core strength as part of the block when he's being able to do it. And that makes up for him only being 309. He is a lighter individual. So that's something to remember. But why I see him potentially as a center prospect, a guy that can move a la Jake Brendel, but with a lot better anchor than Jake Brendel. So he's really smart and takes good angles in the run game. He does a good job of working off combo blocks and getting to the second level. I think he's one of those guys that does a really good job in all of those type things. Now, what do we talk about? A little bit, the anchor issue could be a little bit of a problem because he's 309 pounds. It is better than Jake Brendel, but he does have a tendency to potentially get drove back by some of the bigger defensive tackles. If he's going against some of the bigger defensive tackles, he might get walked back towards the quarterback. So he's going to fit into particular schemes. He is built for the Kyle Shanahan scheme. That's what he does. And with a better anchor, he could be better than Jake Brendel. But I think that's something that he's just, going to have to maybe put on a little bit of weight, work on sinking his hips a little bit and getting better in that category when it comes to, playing on the inside. But I really like him. I think he's a talented dude. And I think he provides the 49ers potentially an opportunity develop a center of the future, even if you don't get somebody that played center, consistently, in the draft. So, a lot of times people don't like guys changing positions, but he's got the ability to do so. And that's ultimately what you're looking for. Now, another guy that could be available for the 49ers, and this one is an offensive tackle, and I think he's might stay at offensive tackle. We talk about a lot of guys that are moving inside. We were on this episode, but that's Josh Connerly out of Oregon. And I'm actually working on a film breakdown that I'm going to be putting out over on Patreon about Josh Connerly here pretty soon. 6'4", 313 pounds. He's got this size that you really want and need. He's got athleticism to be able to do the things that you want. He's probably going to run a sub 540 when he gets to the combine, which is going to be impressive. That'll be some of the top speed for an offensive tackle in the draft. The 313 pounds is not the biggest, but it's plenty of size to be able to play in this zone scheme. He does have 34-inch arms, so plenty of arm length to play on the outside is why I see him as a offensive tackle in the NFL. So that's what I, kind of like it when it comes to his size and his speeds. Now let's talk about his strengths when it comes to playing offensive tackle. Number one, he's really good when it comes to pass protection because he did a lot of pass protection at Oregon. They were in the gun a lot, Dylan Gabriel back there, so he does a really good job with his technique playing, in space as an elite pass rusher, and he can handle guys that have natural athleticism, so he does a really good job. He's another guy that's a natural knee bender. You don't see a lot of the waist bend, so we don't see a lot of the balance issues, and that allows him to keep a good pad level, which I liked about him as well. And so that's what you're looking for. You don't want narrow feet. You don't want guys who bend at the waist. You want guys who stay back and also can bend their knees and be able to do the things they need to do. And he does a pretty good job when it comes to that. He's got really good body control when getting to the second level. And just like with some of the other guys we've talked about, the angles he takes are pretty precise. And so he does a good job getting down and then breaking down in front of really good second level players and making blocks. So he's talented in that area. He's another guy who's got a good processor. If you notice the things that we're finding about the players that the 49ers could target, they've got to have a good first step. They've got to have good lateral quickness. They've got to be able to anchor, and they've got to be super intelligent to be able to understand the football IQ of who's coming and who's not, twists, blitzes, and be able to pick those things up on the fly. You can't have what happened at the end of the Super Bowl a couple of years ago with a free rusher because you went the wrong way. So getting guys that can do that. And then you have to have a nasty streak to be able to finish. And that's what we're talking about when you find these guys that can do it. So he's one of those guys that he's got it. And he's a guy that's a fluid mover in space, screens, being able to pull consistently. Josh Connerly does all those really well. His footwork and pass protection is superb. And so he's a very talented individual that the 49ers could lock up in, in the second round. I think that's probably where the hotbed will be for him, where he could potentially go. With all things, there's some things that he doesn't do well. Sometimes he struggles to recover when he overextends in his set. And so when you overset, you can get caught up by some of the better pass rushers as they're working inside moves. And there were some times that he got caught with some of the better pass rushers that they were able to, handle him when it made it come to inside moves. He's also not the strongest. He's got adequate strength. So if you get a bigger defensive end, they can work him and be able to drive him back and collapse the pocket. So when he's going against guys that are a lot bigger and stronger, it's got Myles Garrett, for instance, that's going to be an issue. He doesn't have the supreme anchor of some of the other offensive tackles in this draft. So those are some things he's going to have to work with. And he's going to have to continue, just like everybody else, to get better when it comes to hand placement and hand technique. But Josh Connerly in the second round, not such a bad pick. And there are other guys, and I'll mention it real quick. I didn't get a chance to talk about Wyatt Millum. I've talked about him in another episode. I do believe he's an offensive guard. I want to talk about him, so I'm going to have to do another video. I want to talk about him. I want to talk about Cameron Williams from Texas. I want to talk about there's some other guys. Let me see. Let me go down my list here. I do want to talk about Tate Ratledge out of Georgia. I think he could be another option for the 49ers. And how about Charles Grant? That's another one that I want to talk about out of Williams and Mary. I was breaking down his film the other day as well. So those are more guys that I'm going to get to down the road. But these are some day 2 picks the 49ers could target. So if they decide to go defensive tackle, maybe they go Walter Nolan. Or maybe they decide to go edge rusher Mike Green, or one of those guys. I'm just throwing out names. It doesn't mean it has to be those guys in round 1. These are some options for the 49ers in round 2. Now, these are really good players, and like I said, there's a lot more to break down. But if you haven't heard of these names, go check them out. Fun players, especially, guys like Donovan Jackson, Ariante Irsay. These are big physical guys who can get some things done. And then if you're looking for a center prospect, maybe could be one of the highest center prospects taken is Marcus Bowe out of Purdue. And I think that, for a lot of people, he's going to remind them of Zach Tom. And so I think that's kind of the relation you're going to get. So good players. I think they could all potentially be good pros in the NFL. And I actually like the depth of the offensive line in this draft a lot more than I like the depth of the offensive line in last draft. But I like the top end part of the draft last year more than I like it this year. So rounds 2, rounds 3, a lot more really good football players when it comes to O-line than last year, but the top end's not as good. So that's why the 49ers might wait until round 2, round 3 to hit on offensive line. And I'm going to also do, of course, another one about some round 2 prospects, round 3 prospects, but I also want to do a day 3 one as well, talk about some O-line prospects, because Niners are going to be hitting the offensive line in this draft. And so it's going to be a lot of fun. If I didn't talk about your guy, let me know in the comment section, and I'll make sure to break it down. Also, if you have prospects, I don't care where they're at, and you want me to check them out, I will. Let me know in the comment section. I'll get to that. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Listening audio platform 49ers Cutback on Believe Network. Please give it a 5-star rating. This episode is brought to you by Bet Online. The game starts here. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Until then, stay safe. Remember, the right way is always the 49ers way.